The plane had just landed, but no one was moving. A group of people stood near the exit, watching in stunned silence as a woman in a crisp navy blue uniform trembled under the weight of reality crashing down on her. Her name was Lauren Whitmore. Just minutes ago, she had the power. Now, she was nothing. Jessica Holloway stood a few feet away, perfectly composed, her sharp eyes locked onto Lauren's face. The young flight attendant's breath was shaky. Her world had just shattered, and she knew there was no way out. A man in a tailored suit stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "Miss Whitmore, you're fired." A murmur swept through the small crowd. Someone let out a soft chuckle. A phone camera zoomed in. Lauren's face twisted. "You can't do this," her voice cracked. "You can't." Jessica tilted her head slightly. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice smooth and controlled. "I already did." The engines roared as the private jet lifted off the runway, slicing through the evening sky. The cabin was sleek, modern, built for comfort. Jessica Holloway sat in business class, her posture relaxed but deliberate. She adjusted the cuffs of her silk blouse, her mind already shifting to the next investment deal on her agenda. She was a woman who moved with purpose, always 3 steps ahead. The flight was supposed to be uneventful. It wasn't. Jessica had noticed Lauren Whitmore the second she boarded. The 23-year-old flight attendant had the kind of expression that people like Jessica could read instantly: entitlement, insecurity, and a thinly veiled resentment. Lauren barely glanced at the other business class passengers, greeting them with forced politeness. But when her eyes landed on Jessica, something flickered. It wasn't just annoyance. It was something uglier. Lauren approached, her polished shoes clicking against the floor. She stopped in front of Jessica's seat, arms crossed. The smile she forced onto her face was so insincere, it barely counted as one. "Ma'am, business class is reserved for certain passengers," she said, her tone condescending like she was speaking to a child. Jessica didn't look up right away. She took her time, finishing the note she was typing on her tablet before lifting her gaze. "Excuse me?" Lauren's smile didn't falter, but her patience did. "I'm going to need you to move to economy." Silence. Jessica studied her for a second. She saw it all: the fake confidence, the eagerness to assert dominance over someone she assumed was beneath her. "You seem confused," Jessica said calmly. "This is my seat." Lauren's smile disappeared. "No, you don't understand," she said, leaning in slightly. "This section isn't for people like you." Jessica blinked slowly. She had heard worse in her life, a lot worse. But Lauren had just made a mistake, a big one. One of the other passengers, an older man in a gray blazer, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. A younger woman across the aisle subtly turned on her phone's camera. The tension in the cabin shifted, like everyone sensed that something significant was about to unfold. Jessica let a beat pass before responding. "I'll say this once. I'm in my assigned seat, and I'm not moving." Lauren scoffed, straightening up. "Fine, we'll see how far this goes." She turned on her heel and walked off, her ponytail bouncing behind her. Jessica exhaled slowly. She had dealt with people like Lauren before, people who confused temporary authority with actual power. She had learned, long ago, that the best way to handle them wasn't through anger. It was patience, strategy. Let them dig their own grave. She glanced out the window, watching the last streaks of sunlight disappear beyond the clouds. This flight was going to be far more interesting than she'd expected, and by the time it landed, Lauren Whitmore's life would never be the same. Lauren moved down the aisle, her heels clicking just a little harder than necessary. Her face was tight with irritation, but she kept her expression neutral, glancing around as if checking on the other passengers. But everyone knew. Everyone had seen. Jessica remained seated, completely still, her face unreadable. She didn't follow Lauren with her eyes. She didn't need to. A few rows down, Emily, one of the younger flight attendants, stood near the galley, shifting uncomfortably as Lauren approached. Emily had been watching the whole thing, and the way she nervously tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear made it obvious. She didn't agree with what just happened. Lauren stopped beside her. "Did you see that?" she muttered under her breath, low enough that the passengers wouldn't hear. Emily hesitated. Yeah, but..." Lauren rolled her eyes. "She thinks she's someone important," she scoffed. "This is business class. It's not a free upgrade section for..." She didn't finish her sentence, but the implication was crystal clear. Emily swallowed hard. "Lauren, her ticket checks out." Lauren shot her a sharp look. "You questioning me now?" Emily dropped her gaze. No, I'm just saying maybe we should— Forget it, Lauren snapped, waving a dismissive hand. Watch and learn, sweetheart. Some people need to be reminded of their place. She turned sharply and marched back toward Jessica's row, forcing her face into a neutral expression. Jessica didn't react when Lauren stopped beside her again. She had seen this move before, a second attempt at dominance, a chance for Lauren to reassert control. Ma'am, Lauren said, voice sugar-coated with fake politeness, I'm giving you one last chance to move. Jessica finally turned her head to look at her. Or what? Lauren stiffened. The tension in the cabin grew thicker. A few passengers subtly turned their heads, pretending to be uninterested, but everyone was listening. Jessica tilted her head slightly, studying the woman in front of her. You already tried embarrassment, she said, her voice as smooth as glass. Didn't work. So what's next? You gonna drag me to the back of the plane yourself? A flicker of something crossed Lauren's face. Uncertainty. Just for a second. But it was enough. Jessica smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was the smile of someone who had already won. Lauren's fingers curled at her sides. She turned quickly, storming back toward the galley, her face burning. Jessica leaned back in her seat, adjusting her cuffs. This was going to be easier than she thought. She didn't have to do anything. Lauren was going to destroy herself. Lauren stood in the galley, gripping the edge of the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. Her face burned with frustration. How dare that woman talk to her like that? Who did she think she was? Emily hesitated nearby, pretending to organize a tray of drinks, but she was watching. She had seen Lauren get embarrassed. Twice. Lauren exhaled sharply, forcing herself to stay calm. She wasn't about to let some entitled passenger get the best of her. No, she'd handle this the way she always did, by reminding people who was in charge. She grabbed a glass and filled it with water. Then, with the fakest customer service smile she could muster, she turned and walked back toward Jessica's row. Jessica hadn't moved. She still sat with the same composed expression, her posture perfect, her attention drifting between her tablet and the view outside the window. She didn't even acknowledge Lauren as she approached. Lauren's grip tightened on the glass. Would you like something to drink? She asked, her voice artificially sweet. Jessica finally looked up. Just water? Lauren forced a smile and placed the glass on the tray table, but with just enough force that it tipped slightly, splashing water onto Jessica's sleeve. A soft gasp came from a passenger across the aisle. Emily, who had been watching from the galley, stiffened. Jessica exhaled slowly, dabbing her sleeve with a napkin. Her expression didn't change. Not a flicker of emotion crossed her face. But that silence? That was the real power move. She didn't react, didn't complain, didn't even acknowledge what had just happened. And that made Lauren furious. Jessica folded the napkin neatly, set it aside, and finally looked Lauren directly in the eye. Accidents happen, she said evenly. Lauren's nails dug into her palm. Jessica held her gaze for just a moment longer, long enough to let Lauren know that she wasn't fooling anyone. Then, just like that, she turned back to her tablet, dismissing Lauren without a second thought. Lauren's face burned. She spun on her heel and stormed back to the galley, her heart hammering in her chest. This wasn't over, not even close. Lauren stood in the galley, gripping the metal edge of the counter so tightly her fingers ached. Her face was hot, her mind racing. The way Jessica had looked at her, that quiet, effortless dismissal, was worse than if she had snapped back. It was worse than if she had yelled. Jessica didn't see her as a threat. That realization made Lauren's skin crawl. Emily was still hovering nearby, nervously adjusting cups on a tray. She had seen the whole thing. They all had. Lauren exhaled sharply and turned to her. Did you need something? Emily hesitated. Look, maybe we should leave her alone, she said carefully. She's not really— Lauren's eyes narrowed. Not really what? Emily swallowed. She's not causing trouble, Lauren scoffed. Oh, please. She grabbed a towel and wiped down the counter, though it didn't need cleaning. People like that, they think they're untouchable. You give them an inch, they take the whole damn mile. Emily didn't respond. She just looked down, shifting awkwardly. Lauren rolled her eyes. You're too soft, she muttered, tossing the towel aside. Watch and learn, sweetheart. She turned and strode back down the aisle, making sure her heels hit the floor a little harder this time. Jessica was still in her seat, calm as ever. She hadn't even moved the glass of water Lauren had so obviously accidentally spilled. The damp napkin sat neatly folded on her tray table, as if the whole thing had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Lauren clenched her jaw. She wasn't done. She glanced at the other passengers as she passed. Some avoided eye contact. Others were watching closely, their phones resting on armrests, cameras subtly angled. Lauren had been working flights long enough to know when people were recording. It didn't bother her. She'd dealt with difficult passengers before. She always won. She stopped a few feet from Jessica's seat and turned, raising her voice just enough to be heard over the hum of the engines. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, plastering on a tight-lipped smile, "we'd like to remind everyone to remain seated in their assigned class. Business class is for ticketed passengers only." A few heads turned. Some exchanged glances. Jessica? She didn't even blink. Lauren felt her confidence return. "If any passengers need assistance relocating to their correct seats, please let the crew know." She glanced at Jessica, waiting for a reaction. A frown, an argument, anything, nothing. Jessica just sipped her water. Lauren's stomach twisted. She turned on her heel and stalked back toward the galley, her heart pounding. But just as she reached the curtain, a voice stopped her. "Excuse me, miss." She froze. Slowly, she turned back. The older man in the gray blazer, row 3A, was looking directly at her. His expression was calm but pointed. "Yes, sir?" Lauren asked, forcing a polite smile. The man folded his hands in his lap. "I've been flying for 40 years, he said, his voice steady. "Never seen a flight attendant harass a passenger this much." A murmur rippled through the nearby seats. A few people exchanged glances. A phone camera definitely tilted upward. Lauren's smile tightened. "I'm simply ensuring that all passengers are seated in the correct—" "That woman is in her assigned seat," the man interrupted. "You've checked her ticket. Twice." Lauren's palms started to sweat. "Sir, this is—" The man leaned back in his seat, eyes sharp. "You keep pushing," he said, "and it's not her you're going to embarrass." Lauren's throat tightened. Jessica set her glass down with a soft clink. "Would you like to check my ticket again, Miss Whitmore?" she asked smoothly. A sharp, heavy silence filled the space. Lauren felt every eye on her, every camera. She forced a stiff smile. "That won't be necessary," she said through gritted teeth. She turned quickly and disappeared into the galley, her pulse hammering. This wasn't over, not yet. Lauren stormed into the galley, her hands trembling with frustration. She yanked the curtain closed behind her, shutting out the prying eyes from the cabin. Her heart was racing. That old man, that woman, they were making her look like a fool. She needed to get control back, fast. Emily stood by the coffee machine, fidgeting with a stir stick. She had seen everything. Lauren exhaled sharply and turned to her. "Can you believe this?" she hissed. "Passengers are literally questioning my authority now." Emily hesitated, then carefully placed the stir stick down. "Lauren, maybe we should just let it go." Lauren's eyes snapped to her. "Let it go?" She let out a dry laugh. "Oh, so now you're taking her side?" Emily shifted uncomfortably. "It's not about sides, it's just, she hasn't actually done anything wrong." Lauren scoffed. "You saw the way she looked at me." Emily didn't answer. Lauren's hands curled into fists. She wasn't going to let some stuck-up businesswoman humiliate her. She had worked hard to get here. She wasn't about to let some entitled passenger walk all over her and act like she was nothing. Her mind raced. She needed to remind Jessica who was in charge. Then it hit her. A slow, cruel smile crept onto Lauren's lips. She turned back to Emily. "I'm making an announcement," she said, reaching for the intercom. Emily's eyes widened. "Lauren, don't—" But Lauren had already pressed the button. A soft chime echoed through the cabin. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," Lauren's voice rang out smoothly. "As a reminder, passengers should remain in their assigned sections for the duration of the flight. If you have any issues with seating arrangements, please remember that our staff is here to assist, so long as you cooperate. Thank you." She released the button, her pulse thrumming with satisfaction. There, a subtle warning, a reminder to everyone on board that she was still in control. She turned back to Emily, grinning. "That should shut her up." Emily looked horrified. "Lauren," she whispered, "you're making this worse." Lauren rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, what's she gonna do? Complain?" She scoffed. "No one cares. By the time we land, everyone will have forgotten this ever happened." But as she pulled the curtain back and stepped into the aisle, she realized just how wrong she was. Jessica was still seated, but now several passengers were openly watching her. The man in the gray blazer? He was shaking his head in disapproval. A woman across the aisle had her phone out, screen glowing. A young guy in row 5 was whispering to his seatmate. And Jessica? Jessica was smiling. Not a big smile, just the slightest upward tilt of her lips, the kind of expression that made Lauren's stomach twist. because it wasn't the smile of someone who had lost. It was the smile of someone who was waiting. Lauren's pulse kicked up. Jessica turned her head slightly, locking eyes with her. "That was a bold move," she said casually. Lauren straightened, crossing her arms. "Just doing my job." Jessica nodded, still smiling. Lauren swallowed hard. Why did it feel like she had just made a mistake? Jessica finally looked away, returning her attention to her tablet. Lauren forced herself to stand tall and turn back toward the galley, but something gnawed at her, a tight, uneasy feeling in her chest. She was losing control of this situation, and the worst part, she wasn't sure why. Lauren's footsteps were sharp and deliberate as she stalked back toward the galley, but inside, her confidence was unraveling. The second she stepped behind the curtain, she pressed her back against the wall and exhaled shakily. Why wasn't this working? She had put passengers in their place before. She had shut down entitled businessmen who thought they could treat flight attendants like servants. She had handled rowdy, drunk passengers with nothing but a cold glare and firm authority. So why was Jessica Holloway so different? Because she wasn't reacting. Lauren had expected outrage, complaints, maybe even an argument. Instead, Jessica was playing a different game, one Lauren didn't understand, and that terrified her. Emily was still in the galley, pretending to organize napkins but clearly watching. Lauren turned to her. "Do you see this?" she snapped, keeping her voice low. "She's trying to make me look bad." Emily hesitated. "Lauren, I don't think she's trying to do anything." Lauren let out a humorless laugh. "Are you serious? She's making a scene without even doing anything. It's manipulative." Emily bit her lip, looking like she wanted to say something, but thought better of it. Lauren didn't care. She needed to do something, anything, to regain control. Then an idea hit her. She straightened, a slow smirk creeping onto her face. "I know how to handle this." Emily tensed. "Lauren, maybe you should—" But Lauren was already moving. She stepped out of the galley and walked straight toward Jessica's seat. This time she wasn't subtle. She stopped directly beside her, making sure everyone nearby could hear. "Ma'am, I need to have a word with you." Jessica glanced up lazily from her tablet. "Yes?" Lauren folded her arms. "You're making some of the other passengers uncomfortable." Silence. A few heads turned. Someone stifled a gasp. Jessica blinked slowly. "Am I?" Lauren nodded. "Yes, you're drawing unnecessary attention to yourself. People are starting to feel uneasy." Jessica's lips twitched as if she were amused. "You mean you're feeling uneasy?" Lauren stiffened. "Excuse me?" Jessica set her tablet down on the tray table. Her movements were slow, calculated. "Let's be honest, Miss Whitmore," she said, voice smooth as silk. "You're not speaking on behalf of the passengers. You're speaking for yourself." Lauren's jaw clenched. Jessica tilted her head slightly, studying her. "You don't like that I didn't react the way you expected, and now you're trying to spin a new narrative, one where I'm the problem." Lauren's face burned, because that was exactly what she was trying to do. A hush had fallen over the surrounding passengers. The man in the gray blazer was watching with sharp eyes. A woman across the aisle had her phone raised slightly, pretending to scroll but obviously recording. Lauren's pulse pounded in her ears. She had walked straight into a trap. Jessica smiled faintly. "If you're going to fabricate a complaint," she said, voice light but dangerous, "at least be a little more creative." A soft chuckle rippled through the cabin. Lauren's stomach twisted violently. She opened her mouth, searching for a response, any response, but nothing came. For the first time, she had nothing to say. Jessica held her gaze for a moment longer, then, dismissively, picked up her tablet and resumed reading. Lauren stood there, frozen, as humiliation crashed over her like a tidal wave. She turned sharply and walked away, her face burning, her hands shaking. This wasn't just a bad interaction anymore. It was personal, and she wasn't going to let Jessica win. Lauren sat in the galley, gripping a bottle of sparkling water so tightly her fingers ached. Her mind was spinning, her breath coming too fast. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was supposed to be in control. Instead, she had become the spectacle. Every time she tried to put Jessica in her place, it backfired. And now people were watching her, recording her. Lauren had dealt with difficult passengers before, but this wasn't the same. Jessica wasn't raising her voice. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't doing anything. Yet somehow she was making Lauren look like a fool, and worst of all, she wasn't scared. Lauren exhaled sharply and slammed the bottle onto the counter. Emily flinched from the other side of the galley. "Lauren," she said carefully, "maybe it's time to stop." Lauren snapped her head up. "Excuse me?" Emily hesitated but stood her ground. "You've made your point. She's not moving. Maybe we should just—" Let it go. Lauren's stomach twisted. Let it go? She repeated, her voice sharp. Are you serious? Emily shifted uncomfortably. This isn't going the way you think it is. Lauren scoffed. Oh, really? And how do you think it's going? Emily didn't answer. Lauren let out a humorless laugh and turned away. She needed to think. She couldn't just walk away from this. She'd already gone too far. If she backed down now, she'd look weak. No, she had to do something bigger. She had to shut Jessica down in a way that couldn't be ignored, and suddenly she knew exactly how to do it. Lauren grabbed the intercom. Emily's eyes widened. Lauren, don't... Too late. Lauren pressed the button. The soft chime rang through the cabin. Attention passengers, Lauren's voice rang out, calm and professional. We'd like to remind everyone to be respectful of crew members and to comply with all instructions given by the flight staff. Failure to do so may result in security intervention upon landing. Thank you for your cooperation. She let go of the button, satisfaction surging through her veins. There. She had just painted Jessica as a disruptive passenger without even saying her name. Now, when they landed, security would already be on alert. All she had to do was file a formal complaint, say that Jessica had been aggressive, say she refused to follow instructions. It would be her word against Jessica's, and who were they more likely to believe? Lauren turned back to Emily with a smug smile. Problem solved, but Emily wasn't smiling. Lauren, she said quietly, you just made a huge mistake. Lauren rolled her eyes. Oh, please, she's one person. What's she gonna do? Emily swallowed hard. I don't think you understand who she is. Lauren frowned. What are you talking about? Emily hesitated. I don't know for sure, but something about her, the way she's handling this, she's not normal. Lauren scoffed. You're being dramatic. Emily didn't argue. She just looked toward the curtain leading back to the cabin where Jessica sat, calm, silent, and completely unbothered. Lauren smirked. Let her act confident. Let her pretend this wasn't getting to her. Because the second they landed, Jessica Holloway was going to regret ever stepping on this flight. The plane had begun its descent, but inside the cabin, the tension was at an all-time high. The intercom announcement had changed everything. Passengers were whispering, some glancing nervously at Jessica, others at Lauren. Phones were angled just right, recording, waiting. But Jessica was relaxed. She calmly powered down her tablet, placed it inside her designer leather bag, and adjusted the cuffs of her silk blouse. If she was concerned about what would happen when they landed, she didn't show it. Lauren, on the other hand, was practically vibrating with anticipation. She stood near the galley, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles on her uniform, her eyes flicking toward the front of the cabin every few seconds. She could already picture it. Security officers waiting at the gate, passengers gasping in shock as Jessica was escorted off the plane. The perfect ending. Lauren turned to Emily, who was standing stiffly nearby, arms crossed over her stomach. See, she said smugly, this is what happens when you challenge authority. Emily didn't respond. She just kept looking toward Jessica. Lauren rolled her eyes. Oh, come on. What's with the face? Emily swallowed hard. Lauren, she said, her voice low, I really think you should look her up before we land. Lauren scoffed. Are you serious? Emily nodded. Just do it, right now. Lauren sighed dramatically, pulling out her phone. Fine. She typed in Jessica Holloway. And then she froze, because the first thing that popped up wasn't some random woman. It was a Forbes article. Her stomach dropped. She scrolled, her breath catching in her throat. Headlines blurred together. Jessica Holloway, the billionaire investor reshaping the aviation industry. Meet the woman who quietly owns more than you think. Jessica Holloway's next big move, a major airline acquisition. Lauren's hands went ice cold. She felt like the floor had just disappeared beneath her. Jessica Holloway wasn't just someone. She was one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country. And Lauren had spent the entire flight humiliating her. She couldn't breathe. Emily shifted beside her. You get it now? Lauren's mouth was dry. This isn't real, she whispered, but her voice was shaking. Emily exhaled. It's very real. Lauren stared at the phone screen, her pulse thundering. She had just made the worst mistake of her life, but it was too late to fix it. The plane landed with a soft thud. A voice over the intercom welcomed them to Los Angeles, instructing passengers to remain seated until they reached the gate. Lauren's stomach twisted into knots as she peeked out toward the jet bridge dot, and that's when she saw them. Security, waiting. Her chest tightened with excitement until she saw something else. A group of men in sleek suits, Jessica's people. Lauren's breath hitched. This wasn't going to go the way she planned. The seatbelt light dinged off. Passengers began gathering their things. Jessica? She took her time. She stood slowly, rolling her shoulders back, adjusting the strap of her handbag. Then, with the same unreadable expression she had worn the entire flight, she stepped into the aisle. Every eye was on her. Lauren's heart pounded in her ears. Jessica took a few steps forward, then, without even looking back, spoke. "Miss Whitmore," she said smoothly, her voice laced with quiet amusement. "It's been a pleasure watching you work." Lauren's stomach flipped. Jessica glanced toward the security officers, then toward the group of men in suits. One of them stepped forward, nodding at her. Jessica smiled. Lauren's entire world caved in. And then, finally, Jessica dropped the bomb. "Oh," she added casually, "I forgot to mention, I just bought this airline." Lauren's breath caught. The blood drained from her face. Passengers gasped. A few even laughed in shock. Jessica turned to the security officers. "I think there's an employee who needs to be escorted out." Lauren's hands shook. No, this wasn't happening. She opened her mouth to argue, to beg, but nothing came out. Because Jessica Holloway wasn't just a passenger, she was her boss. And Lauren Whitmore, she was done. Lauren couldn't move. Her whole body had gone numb, her mind refusing to process what had just happened. The words, "I just bought this airline," echoed in her skull, each repetition sinking deeper, twisting the knife. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. She had spent the entire flight trying to humiliate a woman who now owned the company she worked for. Passengers were whispering, some barely hiding their smirks. Phones were up, recording every second. Lauren's humiliation was going to live on the internet forever. Security stepped forward, their presence commanding. "Miss Whitmore," one of them said, his voice professional but firm, "please come with us." Lauren's throat went dry. She looked around, searching for anything, an escape, an excuse, a lifeline, but there was none. Jessica was still watching her, standing just a few feet away, her expression calm, controlled, completely in charge. Emily was frozen near the galley, her face pale. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Lauren saw something in her coworker's face that she had never seen before. Pity. Her heart slammed against her ribs. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. Passengers began standing, grabbing their bags, stepping into the aisle. The flight was over for them. For Lauren, it was the end of something much bigger. One of the suited men, someone from Jessica's team, leaned toward her. "I'd recommend you cooperate," he said smoothly. "It'll make this easier." Lauren wanted to scream. She wanted to fight. But there was no fight to be had. Because Jessica had never raised her voice, never threatened her, never needed to. She had let Lauren destroy herself. Lauren's hands trembled as she finally took a step forward. Security escorted her toward the exit, past rows of passengers who no longer looked at her with the same forced politeness they had at the beginning of the flight. Now, they looked at her the way you look at someone who had everything, and threw it all away. Jessica stepped aside as Lauren passed, giving her one final unreadable look, and just before Lauren was out of earshot, she heard Jessica say almost to herself, "Actions have consequences." Lauren closed her eyes. She had just learned that lesson in the most brutal way possible. Lauren sat in the airport security office, staring at the blank wall in front of her. Her hands were folded in her lap, fingers twisting together. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on her chest like a boulder. She had lost, not just her job, not just her reputation, everything. A uniformed officer stood by the door, speaking in hushed tones to one of Jessica's legal representatives. She caught bits and pieces of the conversation. Official termination, misconduct review, potential legal action. Her stomach churned. Lauren had been so sure of herself, so sure that she was untouchable, that she could do whatever she wanted and get away with it. But Jessica hadn't even fought her. She had simply let Lauren destroy herself. The door opened, and Jessica stepped inside. Lauren's breath caught. She looked different now, not just powerful, but undeniable, like someone who controlled entire industries with a single decision. Jessica walked over to the chair across from Lauren and sat down. Calm, collected. She took her time, crossing one leg over the other, adjusting the cuffs of her blazer. Then she spoke. "You made a mistake," Jessica said simply. Lauren swallowed hard, her mouth dry. "You assumed power came from the uniform you wore, the temporary authority you held over passengers," Jessica continued, her voice even. You thought that by pushing someone down, it made you bigger. She let that hang in the air. Lauren felt her throat tighten. But power doesn't work that way, Jessica said. Real power comes from control, and you? She tilted her head. You let your emotions control you. Silence. Lauren dropped her gaze to her lap. For the first time in her life, she didn't have a comeback. Jessica stood, smoothing out her blazer. Actions have consequences, she said, the same words she had spoken before. Then, just as she turned to leave, Lauren whispered, barely above a breath, "Are you going to ruin me?" Jessica stopped at the door. She didn't turn around, but after a long pause, she spoke. "No," she said, her voice soft but firm. Lauren blinked. Jessica finally turned her head slightly. "You already did that yourself." And with that, she walked out, leaving Lauren alone in the cold, empty room.